Today we are working on 3-2, which is solving multi-step equation. Alright, our first problem here says solve 3a plus 6 plus a, which equals 90. So our goal here is to get a by itself. How we do that first is we need to combine our like terms. So the 3a plus, understand that there is a 1 out in front of that, 1a. Combine those together, 3a plus 1a is going to give you 4a. 4a plus 6 is going to equal 90. Now I'm going to write this up here because we're going to pop in some of their work here, but I want you to see that first thing I do is draw a line to the equal sign. And now what I'm going to start, like we had talked about previously in yesterday's, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. We're talking about working this way now. So add and subtract first. Well, I'm going to subtract 6. Whatever I do to one side, I have to do the other. That's going to give me 4a. Really, 6 minus 6 is 0, but I don't even need to write plus 0 here. I can just leave that. And 90 minus 6 is going to give me 84. So now, any more adding, subtracting? Nope. So what do I do next? I can multiply and divide. So I'm going to divide by 4 because the opposite of multiply is divide. Whatever you do to one side, you have to do the other. We have a equals 84 divided by 4. Now, we're going to come back to that. So here, once again, they said the first thing they did here in red was combined the like terms, which we did, and we got our 4a. They subtracted 6 from both sides, so whatever they did one side, they had to do the other. Now this is multiplication in between. So what are they going to have to do? They're going to have to divide by 4, and they can see that in green. And then a equals 21. So now, what we can do is you can go back through and check. So you're telling me that a equals 21. So wherever you see an a, back into your original, we can check and make sure. So 3 times 21 plus 6 plus 21, does that equal 90? Well, that's 63 plus 6 plus 21, so 90 does equal 90, so it checks. On to example 2, pause the video. Alright, when you read this, I like to draw a photo, alright? So this is my house here on the side. This is my garage. Alright, so what am I going to do from there? Well, I know one side of the pen will be against the house, so I'm not going to need fence for that. That's kind of the tricky part of this whole problem. And then two sides are going to have a length of x, so this is going to be length x, and it's going to have a width of, alright, so what is the biggest length this x can be and still only use my 63 feet of fencing? Well, what's my equation going to be? That's the first thing. Take the information you know, kick it into an equation. What is that going to look like? Well, length of side, we don't know what that is, so this is going to be my x's. And I'm going to have 2 of them because I have 2 sides that I'm not sure what the length is going to be that I can maximize the amount of space for my dog. So you can see here we have x, which is this side of our fence, plus 25, which is this side, plus another x, which is this side. And like I said before, we don't need the side that's up against the garage. So this all has to equal my 63 feet that I have a fence. So just like before, first thing I need to do is combine my like terms. So I'm going to take x plus x, and that is going to give me a 2x. 2x plus 25 equals 63. Same concept here, okay? Draw a line to the equal sign. It's, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, working up backwards. So the first thing is adding and subtracting. Well, there's multiplication here, so I want to subtract my 25. Whatever you do to one side, you got to do to the other. So you can see here, subtracted 25 in blue to both sides, simplified, and this is going to cancel, give you 0, in other words, cancel. You get 2x equals 38. Well, now there's multiplication going on here. What's the opposite of multiply? We're going to divide by 2. You can see that in green. Whatever you do to one side, you got to do the other. So what does it leave you with? X equals 19. So we know the pen can be as long as 19 feet on each side, and then the other 25 to use up my 63 feet of fencing. Example 3 here, what we're going to do first is we're going to distribute my 2. So little rainbow, big rainbow. Okay, do not forget that. That's really, really important. Draw a line through that equal sign. That way you don't think about distributed to anything else. It's just whatever's on this side. We're going to get, when we do little rainbow, 2 times x is 2x, and then 2 times 3 is 6. So, once again, order of operations. If I even would go back one. Add or subtract first. Well, this says minus 6. So what's the opposite of subtract 6 or minus 6? Well, it'd be add. So we're going to plus 6, or add a 6 to each side. Whatever you do one side, you always do the other. You can see that they did that here in red. What does that simplify down to? Well, a negative 6 plus a positive 6 is going to cancel out and leave you just with 2x. Once again, it's multiplication, so what's the opposite? Divide. So we're going to divide both sides by 2, and that's going to leave you with x equals 7. In this example, there's a couple different ways to do this. So I'm going to show both of them, and hopefully one of them kind of clicks for you. So the first method is finding common denominators. So we want to combine like terms right away, is what this is having you do. So in order to combine fractions, you got to have that common denominator. So they take and they are going to multiply both sides to get 10 in the denominator. Well, how am I going to make 10 here? And it's kind of like multiplying that opposite side. So if you multiply that opposite side, you're going to times it by 5. Times this by 2. Whatever the bottom of your fraction, you have to do the top. So we're going to take the top times 2, and then the top times 5 over here. So 5 times 3 is where they get their 15. 5 times 2, you should probably draw an arrow so you don't think if it's a negative. 5 times 2 is 10. 1 times 2 is 2. And 5 times 2 is 10. So these have a common denominator, so I can combine them. 15 plus 2 is going to give me 17, and then use that denominator to get 10. So that's kind of your basic, if you can remember your basic rules about fractions, you can combine them with additions, they have a common denominator. Okay, denominator does not change, so that's something important to remember, but you can combine them that way. So I got 17 over 10 times x equals 17. What we're going to do next is we're going to times it, all right? So this is dividing, so if you would see this as 17x over 10 equals 17, that's fine too, because you can multiply both sides by 10, whatever you do one side, do the other. That would give you 17x equals 170. Now this is multiplying, so we're going to divide by 17. And x is still going to give you 10. Alright, now the way they did this is that they just, when there's a fraction, they're going to say multiply by the reciprocal. So 17 over 10, what are we going to do? 10 over 17. So multiplying both sides by that reciprocal of a fraction. This is going to cancel your 10, 10, 17, 17, which is your ultimate goal, so you can get that x by itself. So 10 over 17 times 17 gives you 10. I don't care which way. If this method you like, I don't care which way you go. But x is 10, so you can go back in, check it, and it should work. If it doesn't work, that's when you need to go back through, try to find your mistakes. The other way of doing this is to get rid of your fractions completely. So to do that, what you can see here is they just said, alright, 2 and 5 is going to give me 10. Okay, I'm going to multiply. Whatever I do to one side, got to do the other. I'm going to multiply because I'm adding this in. Okay, we'll just leave it at that. Now I know I'm going to have to distribute here next. Little rainbow, big rainbow. And you can see that I just stuck them on each outside of my equation. Now, here this is where some people get really confused. They said, well, I don't understand how you get to this 15 with this x, because these go together here. So, what you can do in your calculator right now, you can pause the video and kind of work through this, but 15 times 3, and then take all that divided by 2, because you need to remember that this is really 10 over 1. So multiply, when you multiply fractions, multiply the top by the top, bottom by the bottom. When we worked on multiplying fractions, a over b times c over d, what do? it's AC over BD. Multiply the top by the top, bottom by the bottom. So multiplying the top by the top, we have 10 times 3, 30. And 1 times 2, 2. What is 30 divided by 2? That's your 15. Okay? Over here, 10 times 1, 10 divided by 5 is 2. So that's where they get their 15, their 2, is they're just multiplying fractions, top by the top, bottom by the bottom, and then simplifying. Because, for example, this was 15, and this was 10 over 5. Well, what is 10 divided by 5? That is 2, so that's my coefficient that's out front. Well, these are like terms, okay? They both have that x, so we can say 15 plus 2 gives you 17. Now, going back to, you've done all the adding, the subtracting. When you think about that, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, because we know we are working backwards up. We gotta look for our multiplication division next. So what are we gonna do? We're gonna divide by 17, and x is gonna give you 10. So either way, either method works. I don't care which way you choose. Whichever one works best for you is obviously the one I'm going to want you to use. We have one more problem for today, and that's going to be with decimals. So the first thing I'm going to have you guys do, just like with those fractions before, we tried getting rid of back here the fractions. We're going to try to get rid of our decimals here. So what you're going to look for, and this is where this is going to be different every time based on the problem that's given. Alright, this is in the 10th, this is in the 100th, this is the largest 100th, and another 100th. You're looking for which place value in my tenths, hundredths, thousandths, okay? In my decimals, what is the biggest? Well, right now, the biggest place value, I should say smallest place value, is the hundredths, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to times everything by 100. And in this situation, because it didn't say anything, I know in a previous problem, it was 2, I'm just going to make one up, x plus 3 equals 10, okay? When you distributed this, we did little rainbow, big rainbow, and you got 2x plus 6 equals 10. And we did not do anything over here with that 2. And I want you to understand here that this 2 was in the original problem. That is why I only did it on one side. Now, we just decided to times this by 100 to get rid of these decimals. You're going to find that's the reason why we're doing this. Because 100 wasn't in the original problem, you do have to do this to both sides of your equal sign. Okay? So once again, we chose 100, okay? Because that is the smallest place value I have. If you would have had something like 7.357, this is in the tenths, hundredths, thousandths, so you'd be multiplying everything by 1,000. If you had 7.3574, if I can get a 4 there, tens, hundredths, thousands, 10,000ths, so you'd be multiplying everything by 10,000ths, okay? So that's why I chose 100. So we're here. We have everything times 100. We're going to distribute this 100 out. Little rainbow, big rainbow. And that's going to get you 60. 100 times 0.6 gives you 60. 100 times 18.65. Okay, you're moving that decimal 2 of them over, so 1,865. And multiplying 22.85 by 100, move your decimal 2, you get 2,285. Now, we don't have any like terms to combine, so we don't do that here. But now we need to subtract 1865 from both sides. That leaves you a 60a. This is multiplying, so what are we going to do? We're going to divide by a, and you're going to find out that a equals 7. And there's your answer. And you can kick it back in to check. That is all for today.